Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 391 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel. As I record this podcast, the Miami Dolphins, currently at their bye week, have a 4-7 record, and early on in the season, most NFL media and fans were mocking head coach Mike McDaniel, who was once viewed as an offensive genius, and many have speculated that his days in Miami are numbered. But I don't know how real that is right now. The team is 3-2 in their last 5 games. They are not the worst team in the league, but they are also far from the best. People are rooting against this coach because they think he acts like a know-it-all, and they think his press conferences are cringy. But I hate to break it to you, that's not a good enough reason to fire an NFL head coach. McDaniel, overall with the Dolphins, has a 32-30 record and has made 2 trips to the playoffs, and I believe has gotten good quarterback play out of Tua Tagovailoa. A big knock against him is the Dolphins' inability to beat good opponents. Coming into this season, McDaniel has a 3-14 record against opponents with a winning record, and I'm torn about that. On one hand, to be the best, you need to beat the best, but on the other hand, this isn't college football. He should be judged by his overall record, and there was never a moment during his tenure where I thought they were in the same class as Kansas City or Buffalo. For the most part, I view McDaniel's time in Miami as a success. But one has to admit the start was far better than where we are right now. His offense was exciting, his use of motion was special to watch, and he proved what he could do with talented players on offense. In his first 2 years in Miami, wide receiver Tyreek Hill had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons in 2023. His 1,799 yards was 7th most all-time, while his 1,710 in 22 is 13th all-time by a receiver in a single season. And in 2023, running back Raheem Mostert led the NFL with 18 touchdowns. McDaniel was clearly getting results early on in his tenure with Miami. I have long been of the belief that a head coach should go through a rough patch, like they shouldn't be fired the first time their team is not very good, because that's not what the NFL is. That is not what sports is. Mike McDaniel was never going to win 10 plus games every year he was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and if you still believe in him as a head coach, you should keep him as your head coach. The best coaches in NFL history have gone through really tough times, and they have coached bad football teams. And I personally don't look at the Miami Dolphins right now and say they are underperforming. They are clearly not better than the New England Patriots. They are not better than the Buffalo Bills, and that's not the fault of one Mike McDaniel. I think it's the fault of the roster. I mean, they still have some talented players. Tyreek Hill is clearly thinking about his life after Miami, like he's not going to be a Dolphin for much longer. The Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel because of the NFL's fad to hire offensive-minded head coaches, which I totally agree with. If the Dolphins do move on from him, it should be because they have a better candidate in mind and not because of public perception. I don't know if Mike McDaniel is a good enough head coach to win a Super Bowl, but at the same time, I don't think the Dolphins, as currently constructed, are capable of doing so. My bigger issue is with the roster itself than its head coach. I mean, I guess we should talk about Tua. I do believe there's a formula to win a lot of football games with him being your starting quarterback. Just give him a real number one option at wide receiver. Like I said, the Tyreek Hill days are numbered. What if the Dolphins were the team that ended up with A.J. Brown. I think that could work out. You still have Jalen Waddle. There is a world where I think the Dolphins could be very good again real soon. One thing that I do find really interesting about Mike McDaniel is his persona at press conferences. He gives off the vibe like he's all-knowing, like he's a genius, and that's why so many people are turning on him, because it's tough to feel good about a guy who acts that way when he's not winning football games. I had the exact same issue with Bill Belichick, who's arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history. You could take all of his nonsense at press conferences when the Patriots were winning Super Bowls, but the minute the New England Patriots were a bad football team, his act got old really fast. And the exact same thing is happening with Mike McDaniel. The problem is he's not a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's made the playoffs. He's just barely above 500, and yet he has the confidence of somebody who's won multiple Super Bowl titles. Let's take a look at the head coaches who have been let go this year. You have Brian Callahan of the Tennessee Titans and Brian Daboll with the New York Giants. Those tenures were far worse than McDaniel with the Miami Dolphins. And what I mean by that is this: I believe that those two head coaches were part of the problem, and I don't think Mike McDaniel is part of the problem with the Miami Dolphins. Now, do I think he's part of the solution? I don't know. That's what I want to find out. That's why I think the Dolphins should give Mike McDaniel one more season to figure things out. If he can get things back going in a good direction, who knows, they might end this season on a good note. Like I said earlier, they're 3-2 in their last 5 games. If they can be an above 500 team, then I would be impressed, and I would view them as a team going in the right direction. Sometimes pulling the trigger and firing the head coach is taking the easy way out, and these teams have done that way too many times, the Dolphins included. You have the exact same issue with the New York Jets. You just keep cycling through head coaches. Well, if you really believe in a guy, give him a chance. There is a part of me that thinks that they are going to let McDaniel go because they are going to succumb to public pressure. This guy has become the face of what is wrong with the Miami Dolphins. The other issue with him is that the team is middle of the pack in almost every offensive category, and he is an offensive-minded head coach, so he's going to take the brunt of the blame for the offense not being elite. We are talking about a team in the Dolphins that scored 70 points on September 24, 2023. That was the height of Mike McDaniel is an offensive genius. That was when everybody was riding high on the Miami Dolphins, and it's jarring to see where the offense and where the team is right now. So I fully understand not being on board with McDaniel and the team, but you do need to talk about the specific circumstances he's in as head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Tua has missed significant time due to injury. Also, McDaniel has dealt with a diva wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, and this is almost exactly what ends up happening with one of those players. They join their new team, they put up monster numbers, but then things begin to sour really quickly. We've seen it with T.O. with the Eagles. We've seen it recently with Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills, and now you are seeing it with Tyreek Hill and the Miami Dolphins. It's creating a major distraction. Now, you get rid of that distraction, I want to see what Mike McDaniel can still get out of the team. It's also like the Dolphins have to do some real soul searching here. Are they supposed to be better than the New England Patriots? Are they really better than the Buffalo Bills? If the answer is no, then what are you really blaming Mike McDaniel for exactly? Your roster is nowhere near those rosters right now. It's going to take you a couple of seasons to continue to compete with those kinds of teams again. You're not on the level of Josh Allen and the Bills or Drake May and the Patriots. You need to get back to that level. So in the meantime, just see what you have in Mike McDaniel before you make your ultimate decision about him. I don't understand the rush to get rid of him now. I don't know what that would do for you as a team. I mean, are there really people out there that believe that if they got rid of Mike McDaniel right now, the Dolphins would be a competitive team going into next season? No, that's just not the truth. I think they would still be a middling team, and maybe the best version of that team is the one coached by Mike McDaniel. See how this season ends. Go into next year with him as your head coach, and then make your final decision. As fans of sports teams, we all love for the coach to be fired because if the team's not winning, that's the scapegoat we all like to go towards. But the real question you have to ask yourself is this: if the Dolphins move on from McDaniel, is there going to be a better option right away? If the answer is yes, that's fair. I just don't like the idea of firing an NFL head coach who I think is somewhat decent for an unknown commodity. I also did not come into this NFL season with huge expectations for the Miami Dolphins. Maybe other people did. I mean, yes, is it a bit surprising that the New England Patriots are this much better than the Miami Dolphins? Yes, they have a new head coach in Mike McDaniel and a young quarterback in Drake May who is playing out of his mind and is a legitimate MVP candidate. So if you were a fan of the Miami Dolphins, you might be thinking to yourself, we should get our version of Mike Vrabel and we should move on from Mike McDaniel. I'm here to say that might not be an option for you. Mike McDaniel is still a young head coach. He's still only 42 years old. I mean, if you pick the right guy, you could have a long run with him as your head coach. If the Dolphins do move on from Mike McDaniel, I do believe another team would give him an opportunity to be a head coach once again. I don't look at him as one of the worst head coaches in the league right now. I look at him as the most hated head coach in the league right now because of the way he acts and how his persona annoys people. And maybe he does deserve some blame for that. It's like I was saying, when you act that way and you're winning, we can all deal with it. Oh, this guy is a genius. It's a bit annoying, but the team is making the playoffs, so I'm just going to be silent about it. Well, when the team is middling, that's when the detractors come out in hives and say their real feelings about you as a head coach, and that's exactly what is happening right now with Mike McDaniel. What I believe all sports teams should strive for is consistency, and part of that is keeping a head coach in the long term. You don't want to be one of these franchises that switches head coaches every 4 years. You've had success with this guy. He's been to the playoffs twice. You know it's possible. Just see what things are going to look like in a year or two, and then you can decide, okay, things are not really working out here. If the Dolphins fire McDaniel, I think they would just be doing it to react to the noise around him. I don't think it would actually be about the football team. It would be about the negativity surrounding him as a football entity. And the solution to fix that would be to win football games. The Dolphins should try to have a big offseason and sign a bunch of free agents and try to win as many football games as they can next year with Mike McDaniel as their head coach. That is the path that I would go down if I were the Miami Dolphins. Again, he got numbers out of Tyreek Hill. Imagine what he could do with somebody like A.J. Brown. Breece Hall is going to be a free agent. Imagine a running back like that being coached by Mike McDaniel. If this guy's given talented players, he has a resume to get stellar seasons out of them. If the team does move on from Mike McDaniel, what does that mean for Tua Tagovailoa? I mean, I would be shocked if the Dolphins move on from McDaniel before they move on from Tua. I think McDaniel should be given another shot with a different quarterback if you're moving on from Tua. That's how I feel about this head coach. I believe in him. I think the offense could be there if he's given enough talent to win. I would also like it on record that I do believe in Tua as a quarterback. I've seen what he can do. I think you can win a lot of football games with Tua Tagovailoa at the quarterback position. The Dolphins are due for some drastic changes, but it's not about the head coach. It's about the overall roster. They need to take that in a whole new direction, and I would do that with McDaniel as the head coach. Having said all that, this should all come down to whether or not the Miami Dolphins still believe in him as a head coach. If they don't, they should move on from him. But if they do and they move on from him, I don't respect that. Don't move on from a head coach just because the narrative around him says you should. I also think it's impossible not to look at the current state of the AFC and say that it's wide open. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs run seems to be coming towards its end. I mean, they're not the team that they used to be. They're currently 6-5. And then you have those surprise teams like the Colts and the Broncos. The Dolphins could be one of those teams come next season if they make the right moves this offseason. But the counter argument to almost everything I've said on this podcast is that move might be hiring a new head coach. I mean, look at the teams having success with new coaches. You have the Patriots and the Jaguars. I guess for me, it just all comes back to the fact that I don't look at the Miami Dolphins as a massive disappointment. I didn't think they were going to be one of the league's best teams. They didn't do a whole lot this offseason. I don't think Mike McDaniel is the issue. I think the Tyreek Hill thing has become the ultimate distraction because he's put up numbers there and he's no longer the guy he used to be, and he doesn't really want to be there. I get it. This is the NFL. Coaches get fired all the time when teams are underperforming. I don't look at the Dolphins and say they are underperforming. They are who I thought they were. A middling team that needs drastic changes to its roster. My guess as of right now is that Mike McDaniel will be back next season to be head coach of the Miami Dolphins, barring a disastrous end to this year. And if you've been listening, you know that I think that's the right choice here. I think he deserves at least one more year to try to figure things out. Move on from Tyreek Hill this offseason. Move on from all of the noise. Bring in more offensive weapons. And then you could go back to being an entertaining product on the field. Because that's what we're not talking about when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. What they are actually doing on the football field. We are talking about everything else. We're talking about Tua. We're talking about Mike McDaniel and his future. We're talking about Tyreek Hill. Make things about the football team again, please and thank you. The majority of people out on this guy as head coach of the Dolphins is because they find him to be an annoying personality. And that's fine. I just think we need to figure out whether or not he's a good football coach. And I'm not there yet. I don't know if he's a bad coach. I don't know if he's a good coach. I just think he needs one more season. I've seen the good. I've seen the bad. I don't really know what he is yet. As bad as the situation is right now in Miami, and they're not very good, and they're near the bottom of the AFC East, I think it could get even worse if they move on from Mike McDaniel, because I don't know where they would go from there. I don't really believe in what the plan could be. I think the plan should be give Mike McDaniel one more chance. He's a young enough head coach. If you're right on him, you could have the next coach for the next decade instead of just recycling head coaches every 3 to 4 years. If you believe in the guy, stick with the guy. Yes, the 4 years have been a mixed bag, but I I can't imagine another head coach getting as much out of Tua than McDaniel has gotten. I've been impressed with him as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and I think he should remain the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And I think the Dolphins could become a competitive football team once again if during this offseason they make the right kind of moves to fix the holes in the roster. That's the issue here. The roster, not the head coach. No matter how this all plays out, this offseason is going to be a big one for the Miami Dolphins. I think it could end up being a turning point. And it really all starts with whether or not they decide to bring back Mike McDaniel as their head coach moving forward. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.